Well, look at you already with the hard hat, ventilation mask, and the steel toes. Must be because today's Bumblebee video is taking us on a heck of a hike. This time to discover the top 10 secrets of the world's most famous places. Everyone say thank you, UNESCO, for being the only reason I can even provide you with this list today, as they are the true gatekeepers of historical preservation. Thanks to them, I can tell you about number 10, aka Nepal. And no, before you think this is gonna be a segue into me talking about Mount Everest and all its little mountain friends, I'm talking about Lumbini today. Well, Lumbini Nepal is recognized for many things: the colors, the humble yet picturesque scenery, the food, But did you know that Lumbini is the birthplace of the great Prince Siddhartha Gautama, whose mother, Queen Maya Devi, was on her way through Lumbini's enchanting valleys when she delivered her son there, standing on her own 2 feet in the cool shade of a sal tree. The prince would grow up in grandeur, only to learn the lives of poverty just past his palace walls. Siddhartha would devote his life to tranquility and to self-reflection and become who we know to be the Buddha. It goes without saying how many sites of historic importance are steeped in violence. Memorials to the fallen, monuments to the victors, the erasure of past rule, war upon war, and holy places pulverized, but not Lumbini, and not the legacy of the Buddha. Lumbini remains a paradise, an oasis of tranquility for all those abiding it. 300 years after the Buddha's death in the 3rd century BC, the great Indian Emperor Ashoka commemorated the site as the origin of the religion that transformed him himself from a bloodthirsty warlord to a benevolent dictator. Today, Lumbini has become a popular destination for Buddhist pilgrims who have to share the red-eye flight to Nepal with the morons who intend to go freeze to death on a mountain. Meanwhile, in the place that's anything but tranquil, number 9 is the wine sky-eller. Normally, a wine cellar is in the ground, thus a cellar. This uses natural ground temperatures in the dark environment to aid in wine preservation or production. But there's one building that decided to defy that stereotype and put their wine cellar 1,151 feet in the air. In Toronto, Ontario, people flock from around the world to see the CN Tower, a structure built for mobile and radio signals, but also as a lightning rod, because if you build a building that tall, it's not really an option that it's gonna be one. Nowadays, inside the CN Tower is open for tourists and city folks alike to idly wander or dine in. 360, the restaurant, is a rotating platform restaurant at the top of the tower that also features a 360 view of the city. While Torontonians are more than aware of the restaurant's existence, while it's high-end, it's not inaffordable, it's one of those, like the Keg. Not many people know about the wine cellar in the sky, let alone how the Guinness World Records named it the world's highest wine cellar. If you visit the CN Tower website, you can read a whole brief of what they do to ensure the temperatures and air pressure don't damage the bougie wine, usually residing like a mummy in a tomb. Number 8, we go from the sky to the dry. We're visiting Masada, which alongside the Dead Sea is one of Israel's most popular tourist destinations. Many who visit the country make the inevitable stop at this dry plateau raised 1,312 feet above the sea, whether on the way to Engedi or to take a dip in the water. But there's a famous story that comes with the Masada. King Herod constructed the Masada between the 37th and 31st BC to defend the Jewish kingdom from aggressors. And by aggressors, I mainly mean Cleopatra of Egypt, since he hated her ass so much, he built a literal blockade to keep her out, one believed to be impregnable. But it's a century later, during the First Judeo-Roman War, that Masada earned a bloody history. The last Jews to escape the siege of Jerusalem were called the Saccati, aka dagger wielders, who had instigated a rebellion against the occupying Romans to try, as usual, to get them the hell out of Judea. Unfortunately for them, it doesn't go in their favor, and they're cornered in the Masada by the Roman soldiers, who slowly build a 370-foot siege ramp to get over the fortress walls. By the time the Romans make it all the way over, however, the Saccati had solved the situation themselves. Their leader had spurred them all to take their own lives, and all that remained was 960 bodies and 7 very scared survivors. Over in Haiti, we have number 7, the National History Park. Today, it's one of Haiti's most popular tourist attractions and a UNESCO heritage site, and understandably so. The large park holding the Sanssouci Palace and the Citadel is just awe-inspiring. Built 3,000 feet above sea level atop the Mount Bonnet-à-l'Évêque, with sprawling architecture now hollowed out by nature. But such a beautiful site comes with dark secrets. secrets. On January 1st of 1804, the French island colony of Saint-Dominique was declared a republic, and its name was changed to Haiti, the first nation founded on the rebellion of owned people, who battled for nearly 15 years and curb-stomped the big three colonial powers France, Britain, and Spain. The Emperor Dessalines immediately entrusted one of his generals, Henry Christophe, with the task of constructing an immense citadel to protect the young republic. In 1820, just 3 years later, Dessalines dies, and the country is split by the power struggle between Lieutenants Alexandre Pétion and Henry Christophe, and the latter proclaimed himself king of the north. He built Palace Sanssouci with all the money from the sugar plantations he confiscated out of greed and the blood and broken backs of hundreds of workers. Palace Sanssouci was looted after the death of the king in 1820, and since then abandoned. It was seriously damaged by the earthquake of 1842. Henry ruled until August of 1820, when he suffered a paralytic stroke. He tried to hide it from the Haitian people, but once discovered, revolts and coups broke out. In despair over his failure to pacify the country, he took his life with a silver bullet inside the palace. You guys know and love these stories, so number 6 is the happiest place on earth, disastrous Disney. 1999 was a big Disney abandonment year. An example being the Discovery Island in Bay Lake. Originally called Treasure Island, it opened in 1974 as a bird sanctuary and needed a boat to be accessed. That's a pretty neat concept, as was the cute pools and the animal shows. What wasn't so cool was that there was wild roaming alligators everywhere, and the staff mishandled the exotic birds. Oh, and the deadly water bacteria, yeah, that too. When this island was closed, the animals were moved to the new Animal Kingdom resort nearby, and everything else was left to rot. Those caught trespassing on the abandoned island could be arrested and banned from Disney World. Oh no. It actually happened in 2020 when 42-year-old Richard McGuire was camping on the island for a couple days. To quote him, "I wasn't aware it was closed to visitors. Richard, the island looks like Pripyat Amusement Park met Florida. Nobody believes you." Opened in 1976, River Country was Disney's swimming hole themed water park that literally killed 3 people within 10 years. One person's brain was eaten by amoebas that traveled up his nose, while the other 2 drowned at the base of the water slide. But I guess unlike alligators, death is not enough to close a park, and River Country only closed its doors in 2001 after a countrywide setback in tourism forced Disney to cut opening hours. River Country then shut its doors for maintenance and never reopened, and now this park lays decaying. However, it's much more accessible. Employees will straight up forget to close the gate to it, and as a result, many people have broken in and taken pretty cool photos. Number 5 is about a certain ridge of Canada's most famous porcupine ridge. It's the HSIBJ, aka Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump. Doesn't that paint a beautiful scenic picture in your mind? As made obvious by its name, this cliff edge is a buffalo jump, located along the Porcupine foothills of the Rocky Mountains, 8 kilometers west of Fort Macleod, Alberta. It's a popular tourist destination, especially for those traveling the major highway between Albertan hotspots, Highway 785. But if you're ever pulling over simply to enjoy the beautiful landscape, you may be shocked to see a pile of jaded bones 32 feet below you. In fact, that pile of bones is 39 feet tall itself. And that's because, as stated, this cliff was a buffalo jump, which isn't a fun little nickname. It's a remaining evidence of a unique hunting practice carried out over 6,000 years ago by indigenous Blackfoot clans. Blackfoot buffalo runners would dress in wolf skins and mimic howling as they chased frightened herds towards the precipice. The animals would be too panicked to realize the cliff's edge was there until they were upon it. While the buffaloes in the front would try to skid to a halt, the ones behind would keep barreling like a rugby scrum, and the whole pack would end up plowing off the cliff. Blackfoot clan members would be waiting at a safe distance below and would emerge to give any surviving animals a swift end. According to the legend, a young Blackfoot hunter wanted to watch the falling buffalo from the foot of the cliff but did not stay a safe distance away. His curiosity was crushed by the weight of dozens of animals landing on top of him, thus the cliff being named Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump. The site was added to UNESCO's World Heritage roster in 1981. We're going down into the dark and dirty world of NYCs Tunnels for number 4. New York City is one of the most famous places on earth and draws in millions of tourists each year. It's the home of some impressive feats too, including Broadway, Statue of Liberty, arguably the world's largest rat infestation, the One World Trade Center, and over 60,000 houseless people. And just below the hubbub of everyday NYC life, at least 2,000 of them have taken to the underground tunnels in a functioning community dubbed as Mole mole people. It's a game of cat and mouse. Police actively try to hunt them down and evict them from their home, and the mole people evade, but by slipping into places even the city isn't aware exist. Numerous sections of New York subways are abandoned, as are bunkers and old building foundations. In fact, the entrance to the abandoned subway tunnels that start the mole system is super easy to enter, but being caught is a huge criminal charge, fees, and ultimately incredibly dangerous if you do get it. Remember, you're an outsider, and wandering through communities that are tight-knit and dependent on one another to survive in the dark, disease, and rodent-infested tubes could rub some the wrong way. The story of the NYC mole people is absolutely phenomenal, and thanks to humble yet sweet souls like Eric K. Swanson on YouTube, who goes deep into these tunnels to interview those residing in them, the world has been exposed to an underground they never knew was just below their feet. Back in India, we have number 3, it's Bangar Fort. Found on the border of the Sariska Tiger Reserve on the Aravali Range, the Bangar Fort was built by Bhagwan Das, who was the ruler of Amber. Later, it was made into the capital of the court of the Mughal Emperor Akbar. But after the death of ruler Chattar Singh in 1630, the fortunes of Bangar slowly declined. And then after the famine of 1783, it was completely abandoned by locals who moved on to greener pastures. Bangar, once a prosperous town of people and businesses, degenerated into a ghost town. But Mahendra Singh, a guide of the fort, reminds us there's another story about one of India's most famous tourist attractions. The downfall of Bangar has to do with the princess Ratnavati, whose mesmerizing beauty caught the attention of a sorcerer who was notorious for using black magic for nefarious purposes, and he concocted an elixir to make her love him. The princess's maid, one day, unknowingly buys the potioned perfume from the sorcerer, but luckily, Ratnavati realized something was amiss before she uses it. She storms her way into the marketplace and smashes the bottle in front of the sorcerer and proceeds to cuss him out for doing some tomfoolery instead of maybe, I don't know, just trying to talk to her. But when the bottle broke, the evil contents became a boulder that crushed the sorcerer under its weight. As he dies, the sorcerer curses the princess, her family, and all the fort's inhabitants to die with him. Within moments, the entire city collapsed and its inhabitants, including the princess, were killed. It's said that the princess Ratnavati still roams the palace premises waiting to be reborn again, so the curse of the evil magician can be lifted from the fort and the city can be prosperous again. Yes, the story is unproven and seems to be a legend, but that didn't stop the archaeological survey from banning overnight visitors since they kept going missing. Number 2 is a Macedonian tomb. Welcome to Agaia. So, this is a small village in Virginia, Greece, where the tomb of Prince Philip II was found. This small town was already a tourist spot for some historical architecture before the 1977 discovery, which is considered one of the most important finds of the 20th century. Why? Because we finally found out that this small, inconspicuous village in northern Greece was the capital of ancient Macedonia. And who's Philip II? The same dude who subdued Greece through a campaign of divide and conquer. Yes, that's the origin of that phrase. He's also the same guy who gets the old 1-2 from Pausanias, his ex-lover. And if that's not enough, he's Alexander the Great's dad. All we'd known from Philip was he'd been killed in the Agaia Theater, but until we found his tomb, we had no idea where the hell Agaia was. And it is the literal homeland of Hellenistic Greece. And last but never the least is number 1, the royal palaces of Ebony. So, this may seem unassuming, but I assure you this cluster of 12 two-story buildings protected by UNESCO has some pretty hardcore history. Once the capital of Dahomey, it was founded by King Wegbaja at the beginning of the 17th century, who chose this spot to build his palace because it was also the site of the grave of a rival chief, Dan. Yes, the king Wegbaja literally built his MTV Cribs mansion on top of his enemy's tomb. Like I said, it's pretty hardcore stuff. This is why the kingdom was named Danhome, in the belly of Dan. A succession of 12 kings who ruled from the 17th century until the early 20th century, each built a lavish palace on the royal ground. The most historically and aesthetically resonant palaces, including those of the Queen Mother, the royal tombs, and the residence of the priestesses, are now in danger of imminent collapse, however, and major effects have been put in place by locals and UNESCO to try and save the site. Tourism is now crucial to its upkeep. But what is this tourist site the most famous for? Well, being the site of a unique guard of celibate women who lived alone in the palaces and defended Ebony, the only verified Amazons in the world. This all-female force numbered 6,000 at its height and was taught to fight from their youths, making these ladies monkeys battle-hardened, merciless, and prone to terrorizing their neighbors, especially men, which were deemed below them. This incredible sight duked it out and won against everyone until 1894, when it was finally colonized by the French. Thank you once again for tuning in, and I sure hope you enjoyed. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more from us, and until next time, comment down below if there's any sites on this list that you think were the best or the worst, and any sites you think that I might have missed. Have a good one.